My brother stayed after dinner and said, "You're the only woman who understands me." I laughed until he stepped closer. If things were different, we'd make sense. The next morning, my mother said, "Don't ruin this family." So I changed the locks. I wish I could say my brother had never made me uncomfortable before that night, or that my family had always protected me, or that everyone was shocked when I finally told them what happened. But none of that would be true. The truth is, I had been trained for years to make excuses for him. My brother, Patrick, was the kind of person people described as charming after knowing him for 5 minutes. He was funny in a loud way, helpful when someone was watching. My mother, Brenda, called it a big personality. My father, Douglas, called it being intense. I called it exhausting, but never out loud. When Patrick said something rude, I was supposed to know he was joking. When he pushed too far, I was supposed to know he didn't mean it. That was my place in the family. I didn't realize how strange it was when I was younger. I thought every family had one person who could read the tension before it turned into a fight. One person who smiled even when her stomach tightened. One person who made the awkward moment disappear so everyone else could keep pretending things were fine. In our family, that person was me. Patrick was 3 years older, and people treated him like he was difficult but special. If he took my things, my mother told me not to be dramatic. If he embarrassed me in front of people, my father told me I needed thicker skin. If I said I didn't like the way he stood too close or ignored small boundaries, they looked at me like I was the one making it weird. So I stopped saying anything. I stepped aside without making it obvious. I kept my voice light. I said, "It's fine," before anyone even asked. A few months before everything happened, Patrick's girlfriend, Tara, left him. The official family story was that Tara had blindsided him. My mother said she had abandoned him when he needed support. My father said breakups made people act strange. My Aunt Cynthia texted me, "Your brother is fragile right now. Try to be patient." But I knew there was more to it. Tara had messaged me once after she left. She didn't rant. She didn't ask me to take sides. She just said, "I know he'll tell everyone I gave up on him, but I didn't. I gave him chances. I can't do it anymore." Then she told me Patrick had been messaging other women again. Again. That one word told me enough. I didn't get involved. I just said I was sorry and hoped she was okay. I was tired of being pulled into Patrick's storms and then blamed for noticing the damage. But after Tara left, my family acted like Patrick had been through a tragedy no one else could understand. My mother cooked for him constantly. My father checked on him every day. Cynthia sent long messages about loyalty and forgiveness. Everyone kept saying Patrick needed family. And when my family says someone needs family, what they usually mean is they need me to make things easier. So on a Sunday evening, I went to my parents' house for dinner. I remember standing outside their front door with my hand on the knob, already regretting it. Through the window, I could see the warm light from the dining room. It looked peaceful. Normal. The kind of house where people ate roasted chicken and talked about the weather. That was the trick of my family. From the outside, everything looked fine. Inside, my mother was fussing around the table like Patrick was recovering from surgery. She kept putting food on his plate even after he said he wasn't hungry. My father asked him if he wanted to stay the night. Cynthia had come too, because apparently Patrick's heartbreak needed an audience. I sat across from him and tried to act normal. Patrick looked rough. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was messy. He kept staring into his glass like he was waiting for someone to ask what he was thinking. My mother asked 3 times. He sighed every time before answering. "She just didn't understand me," he said. My mother reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Some people don't know how to love complicated people. I almost laughed, but I stopped myself. Patrick's eyes moved to mine. That was the first moment I felt something was off. Not fear exactly. More like my body recognized trouble before my mind had proof. I looked down at my plate and kept eating. After dinner, Cynthia left. My father went to the living room. My mother cleaned just enough to make it clear she was tired, then said she was going upstairs. I should have gone home right then. My bag was by the door. My phone was charged. I had no reason to stay. But the kitchen was still a mess, and old habits are hard to break. I started rinsing plates, stacking them beside the sink, wiping the counter. It was automatic. The kind of thing I did so no one could say I had been cold. Then I heard Patrick behind me. He was standing in the doorway with a glass in his hand. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he said, "You always leave before we actually talk." I kept my voice casual. "We talked at dinner." "No," he said. Everyone talks at dinner. You don't talk to me anymore. I placed a plate in the dishwasher and stood up slowly. There was a heaviness in the room that hadn't been there before. I said, "You've had a hard week. Maybe we can talk another time." He smiled, but it didn't look friendly. "That's what everyone does," he said. "They decide I'm too much, then they leave." I knew that tone. If I comforted him, he would pull me in deeper. If I stepped back, he would accuse me of abandoning him. So I chose neutral. "I'm not leaving because of you," I said. "I'm leaving because it's late." He walked closer to the counter. "Do you know what Tara said before she left?" I didn't answer. "She said I don't know the difference between love and control." I looked at him then. He gave a small, bitter laugh. "Can you believe that?" I wanted to say yes. Instead, I said, "I think both of you probably need space." His face changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. His eyes went colder. His mouth tightened. The sadness dropped, and resentment took its place. "You sound just like her," he said. I dried my hands on a towel. "Patrick, I'm not doing this tonight." He stepped fully into the kitchen, blocking the easiest path to the hallway. That was the second moment my body told me to leave. I can still hear the refrigerator humming when I think about it. That's the strange thing about moments that change your life. You don't only remember the big words. You remember stupid details. The smell of dish soap. The wet towel in your hand. The cabinet door that never closed properly because my father kept saying he would fix it and never did. Patrick leaned against the counter like he was trying to look relaxed. But his eyes stayed locked on me. "You don't get it," he said. "You're the only person who actually knows me." I swallowed. "I'm your sister. Of course I know you." He nodded slowly, like I had proved his point. "Exactly," he said. "That's what I mean." Something inside me tightened. I tried to laugh, because that was what I always did when a moment turned strange. I tried to make the air lighter. I tried to hand him an exit. "Well, lucky me," I said. "Stuck understanding you forever." He didn't laugh. He took one step closer. "Sometimes I think if things were different, you and I would make more sense than anyone else." The words landed so heavily that I couldn't speak. At first, my mind tried to soften them. Maybe he meant we understood each other as siblings. Maybe he meant family loyalty. Maybe he was just emotional and dramatic. Maybe I was overthinking it because Patrick had always made me tense. But his face gave me no safe version to hold on to. He was watching me too closely. "Waiting." I said, "That is a really weird thing to say." He looked offended, like I had insulted him. "Don't do that," he said. "Do what?" "Act like I'm disgusting because I said something honest." My chest went cold. I backed up until my hip hit the counter. "Patrick, stop." He raised both hands, but he didn't move away. "I'm not saying anything wrong," he said. "I'm saying you understand me better than anyone." "No," I said. "That is not all." His voice dropped. "You always knew there was something different between us. There are lines people are not supposed to approach. There are doors that should stay locked forever. Once someone touches the handle, you can't pretend you didn't see it." I said, "You need to stop talking right now." He rolled his eyes. "See? This is what you do. You take something emotional and turn it into something ugly." "I'm not turning it into anything," I said. "You are making it ugly." He flinched, but not with shame. With anger. He started talking faster. He said people made too many rules around feelings. He said family meant being loyal in ways outsiders couldn't understand. He said Tara left because she couldn't handle how deeply he cared. Every sentence made my stomach turn. I said, "You're drunk." He stared at me. "I'm not drunk. You've been drinking." "I've thought about this sober." That was the sentence that broke through my denial. Not because it was the loudest thing he said, but because it removed the last excuse I wanted to give him. This wasn't just grief. This wasn't just wine. This wasn't a clumsy emotional moment. He had thought about it. I grabbed my bag from the counter. He moved like he wanted to stop me, then seemed to think better of it. "You don't have to run away," he said. "That just proves you feel something." I turned around so fast my bag hit my leg. "There is nothing there," I said. "Nothing. Do you understand me?" His face hardened. "You don't have to act so pure." I don't remember deciding to move. I just remember walking to the front door with my hands shaking so badly I struggled with the lock. He followed me into the hallway. "Nicole," he said, softer now. "Don't do this." I opened the door. The cold air outside hit my face, and I realized I had been holding my breath. Behind me, Patrick said, "If you tell Mom and Dad, you'll ruin everything." That made me turn. Not because I owed him another word, but because something inside me snapped into focus. I said, "If you say one more thing, I'll wake them up right now." For the first time all night, he stepped back. Not because he was sorry. Because he didn't want witnesses. That thought stayed with me the whole ride home. I sat in the back seat of the car with my bag clutched to my chest, staring out the window at dark houses sliding past. The driver asked if I wanted the heat turned up, and I said no even though I was shaking. My phone buzzed twice. Both messages were from Patrick. The first said, "You misunderstood me." The second said, "Please don't make me regret trusting you." I blocked him before I got inside my apartment. Then I locked my door, sat on the floor, and tried to breathe. I wanted to call my mother. That sounds stupid now, but in that moment, some childlike part of me still wanted my mom. I wanted her to be horrified. I wanted her to say she was coming over. I wanted her to tell me I was safe and that Patrick would never be allowed to corner me like that again. Instead, I sat there with my phone in my hand and did nothing. Because deep down, I already knew. By morning, Patrick would tell his version first. And in my family, the first version was usually the one everyone protected. My mother called before I had even made coffee. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Patrick standing in the kitchen doorway. I heard him saying he had thought about it sober. I heard the quiet warning hidden inside, "You'll ruin everything." When my phone lit up with my mother's name, I stared at it until it nearly stopped ringing. Then I answered. She didn't say good morning. She said, "What happened last night?" Her voice was sharp. Not scared. Not gentle. Sharp. I sat up in bed. "What did he tell you?" She sighed, and that sigh told me almost everything. "He said he tried to open up to you and you lashed out. He said you made him feel ashamed for needing emotional support." I closed my eyes. Of course. That version was clean. Believable. It made him sad and me cruel. I said, "That is not what happened." "Well, then tell me." So I did. I didn't make it dramatic. I didn't exaggerate. I repeated his words as carefully as I could. I told her he said I was the only woman who understood him. I told her he said if things were different, we would make sense. I told her he said he had thought about it sober. The line went quiet. For 1 second, I thought silence meant shock. Then my mother said, "He's in pain." I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it. "What?" "He's in pain," she repeated. "He just lost Tara. He's humiliated. He probably expressed himself badly. Mom, he crossed a line." I'm not saying it was a perfect conversation. A perfect conversation? I said. "That's what you're calling it?" Her voice lowered. "Nicole, I need you to be careful. Accusations like this can destroy someone." I sat there in my bed, suddenly very still. Not because I was calm. Because I finally understood where this was going. I said, "His words or mine?" She didn't answer. I laughed once, but it came out broken. "You're worried about what I'll say. Not what he said. That's not fair." "No. What he did wasn't fair." Then she started crying. Not loud crying. Not panicked crying. The soft kind. The kind meant to make me feel like I was hurting her by not comforting her. "Please," she said. "Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Your brother is already in a dark place. I am not responsible for his dark place. He needs family. So do I." That stopped her. But not long enough. By lunchtime, my father called. He sounded uncomfortable from the first word. He hated conversations like this. He wanted the issue handled quickly, like a broken appliance. He said, "Your mother told me there was a misunderstanding." I said, "That's not what it was." He cleared his throat. "Look, I'm not defending every word he said." That sentence almost made me laugh. Every word. As if there were several acceptable ones mixed into the unacceptable pile. "He has always had a mouth on him," my father continued. "You know that. I'm not talking about a rude joke." "I know. But he's your brother." I waited. He didn't add anything. That was the entire defense. "He's your brother." As if the relationship erased the harm instead of making it worse. I said, "That's exactly why it was disturbing." My father went quiet. Then he said, "I just don't want this family torn apart over one conversation." There it was again. One conversation. As if a person couldn't reveal something real in one conversation. As if a few minutes in a kitchen couldn't change where you felt safe. I told him I had to go. That evening, Cynthia texted me. "Your mom is heartbroken. Patrick is ashamed. Please don't punish everyone." I stared at the message before replying. "Did anyone ask if I'm okay?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she wrote, "Everyone is upset." Everyone. That word did a lot of work in my family. It made my pain just one inconvenience in a group problem. It turned what happened to me into a shared burden, where I was somehow responsible for making everyone comfortable again. For the next week, The messages kept coming. My mother said Patrick was barely eating. My father said I didn't have to forgive immediately, but I shouldn't shut the door forever. Cynthia said silence could be cruel too. Patrick emailed me from a new address after I blocked his number. The subject line was, "Please read." I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. He wrote like a man giving a speech to a courtroom. He said he was sorry if his vulnerability made me uncomfortable. He said I had always assumed the worst in him. He said he was trying to heal, but my rejection was making that impossible. Then he ended with, "I hope someday you stop seeing me as a monster." I deleted it. I didn't reply, because that was another trap. If I said, "I don't see you as a monster," he would use it as proof that everything was fine. If I said, "What you said was wrong," he would use it as proof that I was attacking him. There was no winning a game designed for me to lose. 2 weeks later, my family had a birthday dinner for my father at a steakhouse. I didn't go. I sent my father a simple text that morning. "Happy birthday. I love you. I hope you have a good dinner." He replied, "Thank you. Wish you were coming." That hurt, but I expected it. What I didn't expect was the photo my mother sent that night. It showed everyone at the table. My father with a small smile. Cynthia holding a glass. My mother leaning toward Patrick like she was guarding him from the world. Beside Patrick was one empty chair. My chair. Under the photo, my mother wrote, "This is what your anger is doing to this family." I stared at that sentence until the words blurred. Then something in me went cold. Not numb. Clear. For years, I had been the person who softened everything. I added context. I made excuses. I protected other people from the consequences of their choices. That night, I stopped. I wrote back, "No. This is what his behavior did. Do not send me guilt pictures again." For the first time, I didn't apologize after telling the truth. My family hated it. The group chat exploded less than 10 minutes later. Patrick sent a long message first. He said he was sorry if I felt uncomfortable, which was not the same as being sorry for what he said. He said he had been emotional and lonely. He said he had trusted me with complicated feelings, and I had treated him like something dangerous. Then he said I had always wanted a reason to cut him down. My mother responded with a heart emoji. That was when I knew I was done reading. Not done hurting. Done participating. Cynthia wrote, "Both sides need grace." My father wrote, "Let's all take a breath." My mother wrote, "Nicole, please stop punishing your brother." I looked at those messages, and for once, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. They had all the information they needed. They were choosing what they wanted anyway. So I left the group chat. The silence afterward felt strange. At first, it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like standing outside in the cold after leaving a burning building. Safe, maybe, but still shaking. Then my mother started calling. Not once. Again and again. When I didn't answer, she came to my apartment building. I saw her from my window standing near the entrance, phone pressed to her ear, looking up like I was a stubborn child refusing to come downstairs. I answered on the 6th call because I was afraid she would start pressing random buzzers. She didn't say, "Are you okay?" She said, "Open the door." "No. Nicole, this is ridiculous. I'm not having this conversation in my lobby." "Then let me up." "No." There was a pause. Then her voice changed. Softer. More wounded. "He misses you." I closed my eyes. "Mom. He cries every day. He says he lost his sister. He should have thought about that before he spoke to me like that." "You are being cruel." "No," I said. "I am being clear." She inhaled sharply. Then she said something I will probably remember for the rest of my life. "Sometimes women have to be strong enough to forgive what men say when they're broken." I felt all the warmth leave my body. Because in that sentence, she told me more than she meant to. She told me she had spent her life doing the same thing and expected me to inherit it. I said, "I'm not doing that." Then I hung up. The next morning, I made practical choices. Not dramatic ones. Practical. I called the building office and updated my access instructions. My mother had an emergency key from years before, and I didn't know if she still had it. I asked that no one from my family be allowed into the building for me, no matter what story they told. Victoria, the manager, didn't ask for details. She just said, "I'll note it on your account." That small sentence nearly made me cry. Not because it was emotional. Because it was simple. I stated a boundary and someone respected it. No debate. No guilt. No family history. Just, "I'll note it." After that, I had my locks changed. When the locksmith finished, he handed me the new keys, and I stood in my doorway staring at them in my palm. They were ordinary keys. Silver. Small. Nothing special. But they felt heavier than anything my family had ever handed me. Because they were mine. That same week, I told Keith at work not to send family calls through to my desk. I didn't give a long explanation. I just said I had a personal situation and needed space. He nodded and said, "No problem." Again, no debate. It made me realize how abnormal my normal had been. Outside my family, people didn't require a trial before respecting a no. The hardest person to tell was my friend Heidi. I had avoided it because saying the words out loud made it real. Some part of me was afraid she would react like my family. Not because she had ever given me reason to think that, but because when your own mother minimizes you, you start expecting betrayal everywhere. We sat in her car outside a coffee shop because I couldn't make myself go inside. I told her everything. Not with perfect words. I stumbled. I stopped. I cried at the embarrassing parts, even though I had done nothing embarrassing. I kept saying, "I know it sounds weird, and maybe I'm making it worse than it was." Heidi didn't interrupt. When I finished, she gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles went pale. Then she said, "Nicole, that was not okay. That was it. No complicated speech. No both sides. No asking what I had done to encourage it. Just, that was not okay." I broke down harder after that than I had the night it happened. Because being believed can hurt in its own way. It makes you realize how long you had been waiting for someone to say the obvious. For a few weeks, my life got smaller. I went to work. I came home. I ignored calls. I deleted emails. I slept with my phone on silent. I checked the peephole before opening my door. Then slowly, the panic started to loosen. My apartment became quiet in a way I had never experienced before. Not lonely. Quiet. There is a difference. Lonely feels like absence. Quiet feels like space. I started cooking dinner without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I watched shows without pausing to answer my mother's messages. I stopped rehearsing arguments in my head during showers. Then, just when I started to believe the worst had passed, my father ended up in the hospital. My mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up, and the second I heard her voice, I knew it was real fear. "It's your father," she said. "We're at the hospital." For a moment, everything else disappeared. Not because I forgave them. Because fear has a way of cutting through anger, boundaries, everything. "What happened?" I asked. She said his blood pressure had spiked badly at work. He was stable, but they were keeping him for tests. Her voice cracked on the word stable, like she didn't fully believe it. I grabbed my keys. On the drive there, my hands were tight on the steering wheel. I kept telling myself I was going for my father. Not for my mother. Not for Patrick. Not for a family performance. My father was still my father. Complicated, avoidant, disappointing in ways I was only beginning to admit. But I loved him. When I walked into the hospital room, he was sitting up in bed with a monitor clipped to his finger. He looked tired and irritated, which actually comforted me because that was a very normal expression for him. My mother sat beside him. And Patrick was in the corner. I stopped in the doorway. He looked different. Thinner maybe. Pale. His usual confidence was gone, or at least hidden. For half a second, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who once walked me home when I twisted my ankle, the one who taught me how to ride a bike even though he teased me the whole time. Grief is strange like that. You can miss someone while standing in the same room with them. My father saw me and gave a weak smile. "Hey, kid." That almost undid me. I walked to him, kissed his forehead, and asked how he felt. "Annoyed," he said. "Everyone's fussing." I laughed because I couldn't help it. For maybe 30 seconds, the room felt almost normal. Then my mother stood and pulled me into a hug. At first, I let her. Then she leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Please hug your brother. He needs to know you don't hate him." My whole body went stiff. I pulled back slowly. She kept her hands on my arms. "Not here," I said. Her eyes pleaded with me. "Please. Your father doesn't need stress. Just one hug. Let him see his children together." His children. Like we were both wounded in the same way. Like I had also done something that needed smoothing over. I looked past her at Patrick. He was watching me with wet eyes. Not apologizing. Waiting. I had seen that look before. The kitchen. The group chat. The emails. Always waiting for me to give him something he could use as proof that he was forgiven, proof that I had overreacted, proof that the family could return to normal without him naming what he did. My mother whispered, "Be kind." And something in me finally stopped shaking. I said, clearly enough for everyone to hear, "I'm here for Dad. I'm not here to fix this." The room went silent. Patrick looked down. My mother's face changed first to shock, then anger. "This is not the time," she said. "No," I said. "It never is. That's how we got here." My father closed his eyes. "Can we not do this right now?" he muttered. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't rush to make his discomfort disappear. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I came to see you." Then Patrick stepped forward. His voice was quiet. "I'm sorry you think I'm unsafe." That sentence told me everything. Not, "I'm sorry for what I said." Not, "I understand why you're hurt." Not, "I crossed a line." "I'm sorry you think." Even in a hospital room, with our father hooked to a monitor and our mother trembling beside the bed, he still couldn't give me the truth without twisting it. I said, "That is not an apology." His face flushed. "My mother," snapped Nicole. I turned to her. "No. I'm done pretending almost apologies are healing." Patrick started crying then. Softly at first, then harder. A year ago, maybe even 6 months ago, I would have panicked. I would have comforted him. I would have said, "I don't hate you," even if I wasn't ready, because the sight of him falling apart would have made everyone turn toward me like I was responsible for picking him up. This time, I didn't move. My mother went to him immediately. That told me enough. I walked back to my father's bed. I touched his hand and said, "I love you. I hope the tests come back okay. I'll check in tomorrow." He looked tired. Maybe sad. Maybe disappointed. Maybe all of it. He said, "I love you too." That was the only sentence I needed from him in that room. I left. Patrick was crying in the hallway when I passed him. My mother was whispering to him like he was the one who had been hurt. I didn't stop. I didn't explain. I didn't look back. That was the last time I saw my brother. My father recovered. Not instantly, but enough. I still check on him through short calls. If my mother answers and tries to bring up Patrick, I end the call politely. If my father says he wishes things were different, I say, "Me too," and leave it there. I don't argue anymore. Arguing would mean I still believed I could make them understand. I don't know if Patrick is in therapy. My mother told me once that he was working on himself, but she said it in a way that sounded like I was supposed to reward him for it. I hope he is getting help. I mean that. I hope he becomes someone who can sit with what he did without needing everyone else to soften the edges. But I don't need to be there for that. For a long time, I thought forgiveness meant access. I thought if I didn't let someone back in, it meant I was bitter. I thought peace required a family photo where everyone stood close and pretended the cracks were just shadows. Now I think peace can look like a locked door. It can look like a quiet phone. It can look like cooking dinner in your own kitchen without wondering who will show up downstairs. It can look like loving your father from a distance. It can look like missing your mother and still not answering when she calls for the wrong reason. It can look like admitting your brother is not safe for you, even if everyone else keeps calling him broken. I still grieve the family I thought I had. Some nights, I remember Sunday dinners before everything became unbearable. I remember my mother laughing at the sink. My father pretending not to listen while secretly following the whole conversation. Patrick making some ridiculous joke that actually was funny. For a few seconds, I miss it so badly I almost convinced myself I could go back. Then I remember the kitchen. I remember the way he stepped closer. I remember my mother's first instinct was not to protect me, but to protect the family image. And I stay where I am. My revenge was not loud. I didn't expose him online. I didn't destroy my family. I didn't demand that relatives choose sides. I simply stopped being the place where everyone else could hide the truth. Maybe that looks cold from the outside. Maybe some people would say one terrible conversation should not erase a whole family. But it was never just one conversation. It was the moment I finally understood what my role had always been. And I refused to keep playing it. So did I go too far by cutting off my brother and keeping my parents at a distance, or did I finally do the one thing my family never expected me to do and choose myself?